The galaxy's great empires saw Earth as a quaint preserve of a fragmented, pacifistic species, a gentle backwater to be patronized, exploited, and quietly carved into spheres of influence. Humanity's governments, perpetually bickering and obsessed with their own planetary history, seemed to confirm this assessment. They had no unified fleet, no grand armada, and their greatest export was art, philosophy, and cultural archives. The galactic consensus was clear. Humans were wonderful historians, terrible warriors. Their greatest strength was considered to be their harmless nature. But the empires made a critical, fatal error. They confused the absence of a unified military with the absence of militarists. They mistook humanity's public face for its private heart. For while Earth's governments talked of peace in the silent depths of their own solar system, in the blind spots of galactic sensors, a different project took shape. It was not born of a single nation, but of a whispered consensus among soldiers, engineers, and strategists who looked at the stars and saw not wonder but threat. They pooled lost technologies, black budgets, and forbidden research. They built not with pomp, but in utter secrecy. They were not an army of a nation, but the militia of a species. And when the first alien claws finally tore into Earth's colonies, thinking they would meet only frightened farmers and token defenders, these silent custodians powered up their engines, unlocked their weapon arrays, and painted their ships the color of the void between stars. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's true strength was not in its loud declarations, but in its quiet preparations. They thought Earth was weak. They were wrong. And the proof was now emerging from the shadows, the Black Armada. The air on the Martian colony of New Hope tasted of recycled oxygen and dust, even inside the pressurized domes. Elias Vance, a grizzled terraforming engineer with hands scarred by hydraulic leaks, and regolith, watched the sky. Not the pinkish daytime sky of Mars, but the data feeds on the colony's main monitor. A sleek, iridescent vessel of the Cathari Imperium hung in high orbit, a symbol of galactic friendship and oversight. For a decade, the Cathari had been the most prominent of the alien powers circling Earth's nascent interstellar presence. They offered advanced medical technology in exchange for exclusive mining rights on Jupiter's moons. They provided stabilizers for fusion reactors in return for cultural and historical data, entire libraries of human art, music, strategy, and philosophy. They were polite, condescending, and utterly pervasive. Elias, like many who worked the outer colonies, didn't trust them. Their smiles were too sharp, their contracts too perfect, their interest in human history too tactical. His suspicions were shared in quiet corners by Major Anya Sharma, the overworked and under-equipped commander of New Hope's Skeletal Defense Force, a dozen aging interceptors, by Liu Wei, a cynical xenolinguist who noted how Cathari conversations always steered toward human conflicts, our divisionary politics, our lack of unified purpose. The revelation came not with a declaration of war, but with a polite notice. The Cathari Imperium, citing galactic stability protocols and the evident inability of the Human Planetary Accord to adequately secure its assets, was declaring a protectorate over the Sol system's outer colonies. Their vessels, they said, would move in to prevent chaos. The transmission was broadcast on all channels, its tone one of benign disappointment. On Earth, the governments erupted in panicked debate. The Human Planetary Accord, a fragile coalition, fractured. Some called for negotiation, others for futile defiance. The public saw only helpless politicians. The image of humanity was one of paralyzing discord. On Mars, the Cathari ship didn't wait for debate. It launched drop pods not to the administrative center, but directly to the central reactor complex and the main water extraction plant. Their soldiers, clad in chitinous armor, moved with lethal, insectal precision. They were not peacekeepers. They were conquerors. Major Sharma's interceptors were swatted from the sky by point defense lasers before they could even fire a shot. The colony's small arms fire pinged harmlessly off their armor. Elias, watching the slaughter from a maintenance trench, felt a fury so cold it burned. This was it. This was the end of the human dream, right here in the red dust. He pulled out a personal comm unit, not the colony's network, but a bulky, encrypted device issued to him 10 years prior after a cryptic meeting on Luna. He had signed papers, taken oaths, and then gone about his life, maintaining the charade of a simple engineer. The device had one button, labeled only with a coordinate frequency and a black square. As Cathari shock troopers breached the main dome, their translator boxes broadcasting demands for surrender, Elias pressed the button. He didn't know what it would do. He'd been told it was a distress beacon of last resort, a futile gesture from a defunct black-budget project from Earth's paranoid past. He assumed it would die in the void, unheard. In the silent, lightless space beyond the orbit of Neptune, in the absolute cold where the sun was just a bright star, something stirred. A field of black asteroids, long noted by galactic surveys as a natural debris field, shimmered. Their surfaces crackled, and obsidian shells unfurled like night-blooming flowers. From within them, shapes emerged, jagged, angular, and utterly dark. They bore no flags, no gleaming hulls, no running lights. Their surfaces were matte black, angled to swallow sensors and light. They were ships, but ships like nothing humanity had ever publicly flown. They were knives carved from the void itself. A signal pulsed on a tight beam laser, hopping through hidden relays. It wasn't a word. It was a data packet, the feed from Elias's comm, showing the Cathari attack, coupled with the Galactic Protectorate Declaration. On the bridge of the largest black vessel, a man known only as the steersman watched. His face was lined, his eyes old with the memory of 100 secret battles fought in humanity's name against pirates and scavengers they had never told the public about. Mars, he said, his voice gravel. They finally overreached. Signal the Armada. Warp space jump. Maximum burn. Tell the Cathari our answer. Across the solar system, in hidden caches in the asteroid belt, in stealth docks on the dark sides of moons, more black shapes powered up. They moved not in parade formation, but in hunters' packs. They did not broadcast challenges. They simply plotted intercept courses. The Cathari command ship, looming over Mars, received a new sensor contact. 1, then 3, then a dozen. Their sensors squawked with confusion. The objects had no energy signatures, no transponders, and their radar return was minimal. To the Cathari commander, it looked like space itself was moving to swallow them. The first they saw of the Black Armada was when the lead human vessel, a jagged dagger of a ship designated Revenant, decloaked at point-blank range, its black hull blotting out the stars. Its opening salvo was not a warning shot. It was a coordinated volley of kinetic penetrators and focused plasma beams that sheared through the Cathari ship's primary weapon array. The message was instantaneous and brutal. You are not welcome here. On the surface, Elias and Major Sharma, pinned down in the ruins of a dome, saw the fiery debris of the Cathari ship rain through the atmosphere. Then a new voice crackled on their local comms, a voice with no hiding code, flat and professional. Colony personnel, this is Naval Asset Sierra 1. Hostile orbital presence neutralized. Stand by for ground support. Do not fire on the black dropships. From the belly of the Revenant, teardrop-shaped craft fell, black as ink, leaving no contrails. The battle for Mars was not over, but the assumption of human weakness had just ended in fire. The shockwave from the Black Armada's intervention radiated outwards faster than light via quantum-entangled comms. On Earth, the fractured planetary accord descended into chaos of a different kind. They hadn't authorized this. They didn't command this. Who were these black ships? Where did they come from? Panicked inquiries shot from capital cities to their own meager system defense fleets, receiving only bewildered negatives. The Armada answered no hails from EarthGov. They spoke only to the colonies under attack, and their language was one of precise, devastating violence. Over Mars, the black dropships descended like falling shadows. They didn't land. They impacted, driving deep into the regolith near the overrun facilities before hatches blew open. The soldiers that emerged were unlike any Earth military. Their armor was the same light-absorbing black as their ships, seamless and angular, making them look like moving fragments of darkness. They moved with a silent, unnerving coordination, their communications seemingly telepathic. They wielded weapons that fired silent pulses of cobalt blue energy, slicing through Cathari chitin with ease. They were the ghosts, the ground force of the Armada. Elias and Major Sharma watched as a squad of 4 ghosts cleared the reactor control room in under 20 seconds, their movements a blur of lethal efficiency. They took no prisoners. They offered no surrender. They simply erased the threat. Anya Sharma, a career soldier, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Martian cold. These were not liberators from friendly power. They were exterminators from humanity's own ID. Meanwhile, the space battle was a lesson in asymmetric warfare. The Cathari fleet, designed for intimidation and fleet engagements against comparable opponents, flailed against an enemy that refused to be seen. The Black Armada ships were rarely on sensors for more than a few seconds. They struck from behind planetary shadows, from within asteroid fields, using passive sensors and relativistic projectiles. They employed drone swarms that mimicked their signature, confusing and overwhelming Cathari targeting. The Revenant itself engaged the Cathari command cruiser, not with a broadside, but by launching a boarding craft, a needle-like projectile that rammed into the alien hull and deployed a team of ghosts inside the ship. Within an hour, the cruiser's drives went silent, its weapon ports dark. It had been captured, not destroyed. The steersman watched the tactical display from his command ship, the Oblivion's Maw. His strategy was clear: total tactical annihilation and intelligence harvesting. They needed to know the Cathari's next move, their command structure, their weaknesses. The Armada had been built for this exact scenario. Not to fight a fair war, but to win a desperate one by any means necessary. Back on Earth, a different kind of operation began. Dr. Aristhorn, a historian and the only public figure ever vaguely linked to the Armada's myth, he'd written obscure papers on existential risk and societal resilience, was extracted from his Cambridge apartment by quiet men in black suits. He was taken not to a government bunker, but to a subterranean complex beneath the Greenland ice sheet, the Citadel. Here, he was presented to a council of shadowy figures, the architects of the Armada. They were not politicians. They were retired generals, rogue AI ethicists, billionaire survivalists, and former intelligence chiefs. They called themselves the Curia. The governments have failed. The lead curiate, a woman with eyes like flint, told Thorne. The Armada is our insurance policy, but it is a scalpel, not a shield. We need a voice. We need someone to explain to humanity and to the galaxy what we are and why we exist. You understand our story. You will be our herald. Thorne, terrified and fascinated, realized he was to craft the narrative. He accessed the archives, centuries of hidden research, of technologies developed in secret and suppressed for being too dangerous, gravity manipulation that allowed for inertialess drives, consciousness augmentation that created the Ghost's neural link, weapons born of dark matter research. The Armada wasn't just secret ships. It was the embodiment of every technological leap humanity had made, and then, hidden from itself, fearing its own potential for violence. In the Cathari home system, the ruling synod was in an uproar. The human backwater had not only resisted, but had destroyed a battle group with technology they shouldn't possess. Their pride was wounded, but their greed was ignited. These black ships represented advancements they craved. The Synod issued a galactic-wide proclamation. Humanity had employed forbidden, unstable technologies and was now a rogue species. They called for a crusade, a coalition of several galactic powers to quell this dangerous upstart, promising shares of human territory and technology. The bait was taken. The Borlean collective, Mercantile, and ruthless, and the Sylar Starkin, zealous and expansionist, agreed to join. A massive coalition fleet began to gather at the galactic rim, poised to descend upon Sol. The Armada's spies in the galactic data streams intercepted the call. The steersman received the data on the Oblivion's maw. He didn't rally his ships for a last stand. He gave a new order. "Operation Long Night," he said. "They're coming to our home. We will not be here. We will be in theirs." While Earth's governments trembled at the news of the coming crusade, the Black Armada, having secured Sol, did the unthinkable. They powered their mysterious drives, not to form a defensive line, but to leap outward. Using gravitational pathways the galaxy didn't know existed, the entire Armada, hundreds of black ships, vanished from the solar system. They left behind only a skeleton guard of stealth monitors and a single Stark transmission to Earth, released through Thorn. "Hold. Endure. While they look for us here, we will break them there." The galaxy saw the human system seemingly go quiet. Its mysterious black fleet disappeared. The Crusade Armada, millions of kilometers of gleaming warships, advanced towards Sol, confident they would crush a now undefended Earth. They thought humanity had retreated, or that their fleet had been a bluff. They were wrong. The Black Armada was not a shield. It was a spear, and it was already plunging toward the heart of the Cathari Imperium, ready to teach the galaxy the most brutal lesson of all. The deepest darkness is not found in space, but in the calculated wrath of a species that is prepared in secret for its own extinction and decided to visit that fate upon its enemies first. Silence. That was the first weapon of the Black Armada. As the Grand Crusade fleet, a glittering avalanche of Cathari, Borlean, and Sylar warships, pushed into the outer Sol system, they found nothing. No defiant lines of battle. No minifields. No static defenses. Just the quiet hum of planets and the whisper of solar wind. Their long-range sensors probed Earth, Mars, the colonies. They saw civilian traffic, the panicked movements of Earth's pitifully small official fleet scrambling to form a meaningless defensive perimeter. But of the black ships that had ravaged the Cathari at Mars, there was no sign. To the Crusade commanders, it confirmed their hypothesis. Humanity's secret weapon was a limited, defensive system, now spent or hidden. A collective, contemptuous relief washed through the alien fleet. This would be a pacification, not a war. On Earth, panic was a tangible force. Dr. Eris Thorn, now speaking from the Citadel via secured channels, became the voice in the global storm. His broadcasts were not rousing speeches, but grim history lessons. He explained the Curia, not as usurpers, but as a painful necessity, a failsafe built by generations who looked at the stars and saw predators. He showed curated, declassified footage, the ghosts saving Martian children, the Revenant taking fire to shield a civilian evacuation ship. He painted the Armada not as rogue angels, but as humanity's own shadow, the part of themselves they had locked away for being too dangerous, now unleashed out of dire need. It was a narrative of shame and grim pride. Some hailed the Armada as saviors. Others decried them as a new tyranny. But all listened, glued to their screens, waiting for the hammer to fall from the skies. The hammer, however, was not in their skies. It fell on the Cathari core world of Xylos Prime. One moment, its 3 orbiting defense platforms were scanning for meteors. The next, they were expanding clouds of shrapnel, torn apart by kinetic rods fired from beyond sensor range. Then, the Black Armada folded into reality. Not from warp trails, but from gravitational ripples, appearing inside the system's defensive perimeter as if materializing from nightmare. The Oblivion's maw led the charge, a continent-sized shard of darkness. Its opening act was not against the planet, but against the system's star. It launched a specialized probe that plunged into the sun's corona. Minutes later, a controlled, non-destructive but massive solar flare erupted, directed by magnetic fields the probe emitted. The coronal mass ejection washed over the planet, and the remaining orbital infrastructure, overloading shields, frying unshielded electronics, and plunging Xylos Prime's dayside into a terrifying, aurora-lit twilight. The steersman's strategy was psychological warfare on a cosmic scale. He was not there to destroy Xylos Prime. He was there to siege it, to demonstrate that the Imperium's heart was not safe. The Armada's ghosts conducted lightning raids on orbital shipyards, capturing half-built dreadnoughts and stealing data cores. They broadcast the footage on tight beam directly to the Cathari Synod. The message was clear: your crusade is at our home. We are at yours. Whose people will break first? News of the attack on Xylos Prime shot across the galactic networks. It reached the Crusade fleet just as they were entering the orbit of Jupiter. The effect was electric. The Cathari contingent, representing the largest portion of the fleet, went into immediate, frantic distress. Command channels flooded with demands from the Synod to disengage and defend the homeworld. The Borlians and Sylar, now suddenly aware they were pawns in a fight that had escalated beyond plunder, grew hesitant. Their alliance, built on greed and opportunism, began to crack before a single shot was fired at Earth. Back in the Sol system, the human defenders saw the change. The alien fleet's precise formation began to loosen. Confused, conflicting energy signatures flared as different factions argued. Earth's military, small as it was, saw an opening. Following contingency plans Thorn had disseminated from the Citadel, plans devised by the Curia years before, they launched a bold, near-suicidal harassment attack. Swarms of cheap, automated drones, hiding in the debris of Jupiter's rings, ambushed the fleet's lead elements. It was a pinprick militarily, but psychologically it was a revelation. The mighty Crusade fleet was not invincible. It was distracted, vulnerable, and afraid. On Xylos Prime's orbit, the steersman executed the next phase. He opened a channel, not to the Synod, but on a general galactic frequency. He broadcast a simple data packet, the complete, unedited records of the Cathari's initial Protectorate Declaration, the attack on Mars, and the secret Synod discussions planning the annexation of Sol and the enslavement or eradication of humanity. It was raw, ugly proof of aggressive intent. Then, his voice, gravelly and calm, spoke for the first time to the galaxy at large. You have been told we are rogues. You have been told we are dangerous. We are. We became dangerous the moment you decided our home was yours for the taking. We do not seek your worlds. We do not seek your submission. We seek only this. Leave us alone. The Cathari Imperium brought this upon itself. The Borlians and Sylar can still choose to leave. Any vessel that powers down its weapons and departs Sol space will not be pursued. Any that remain will share the fate we have prepared for the Cathari. In the Crusade fleet, the Borlian Commodore, a pragmatic being whose only god was profit, ran the calculations. The potential loot of Earth versus the certain, immediate loss of his fleet to an enemy that could strike his own homeworld, it was an easy equation. Without consulting the others, the Borlian fleet powered down weapons, turned, and began a retreat. The Sylar, furious and zealotous, accused them of cowardice, but with their strongest ally gone and the Cathari breaking, they were exposed. The crusade was crumbling before it had even truly begun. The steersman watched the galactic feeds showing the Borlian retreat. He allowed himself a thin, cold smile. The divide and conquer strategy was working, but he knew the final lesson had to be absolute, irrevocable. He turned to his tactical officer. Prepare the Oblivion's Maw. Target the primary Cathari command ship in the Sol system. Use the Graviton Lance. Show them the cost of their arrogance. Show them the darkness we forged in their shadow. The disintegration of the Crusade fleet was not a graceful retreat. It was a chaotic, unraveling broadcast for all humanity to see. As the Borlian ships turned their gleaming hulls away from Jupiter, the Sylar fleet, bound by zealotry rather than sense, erupted in fury. They opened fire on their erstwhile allies, seeing the retreat as a betrayal of their holy covenant. The Cathari, trapped between the shame of abandoning their own besieged homeworld and the orders to press the attack on Earth, fractured internally. Some captains turned their ships, desperate to make the long jump back to Xylos. Others, blinded by rage, surged forward toward Earth, determined to take some prize from the disaster. It was into this maelstrom of confusion and fratricidal fire that the Black Armada's final lesson was delivered. From the heart of the collapsing alien formation, the Cathari command ship, the Imperious, a leviathan of polished bone metal, tried to rally its remaining forces. Its commander, Synod-appointed and prideful, believed the human Black Fleet was a phantom, a trick of stealth and hidden run. He believed in mass, in firepower, in the undeniable might of the Imperium. He broadcast a defiant challenge, a demand for the Armada to face him in honorable combat. The Oblivion's maw answered. It did not decloak from the dark. It rippled into existence 10,000 kilometers off the Imperious bow, not as a ship appearing, but as a hole in space resolving into a sharper, more terrible darkness. Its arrival was so sudden, so silent, it was more terrifying than any warp flash. The steersman accepted the challenge. He opened a direct channel. "You speak of honor." The steersman's voice grated across the void. "You, who came as thieves and slavers to a world that offered you art and history. Your honor is a lie. Our answer is not honorable. It is arithmetic." The Oblivion's maw did not launch missiles or fighters. Along its spine, panels slid open, revealing a structure that seemed to bend the light of distant stars around it, the graviton lance. It was the pinnacle of the Armada's forbidden science, a weapon that didn't just destroy matter, but twisted the fabric of local spacetime itself. A beam, visible only as a distortion like heat haze off asphalt, lanced out. It did not explode on impact. It connected. Where it touched the Imperious, reality itself seemed to soften. The mighty warship's hull didn't shatter. It flowed, twisting in on itself like melting wax under a blowtorch. Structural integrity fields flared and died. The ship's own immense mass, manipulated by the graviton beam, became its destroyer. It crumpled inward, decks pancaking, reactors imploding in a silent, horrific ballet of forced inertia. In less than 30 seconds, the pride of the Cathari fleet was reduced to a dense, hot sphere of compressed debris, a miniature moon of scrap. The silent display was more devastating than any explosion. Every ship in the Sol system, human and alien, saw it. The remaining Sylar zealotry evaporated into pure, primal fear. Their ships ceased fire, engines guttering out. The last Cathari vessel surrendered, their transmitters bleeding universal codes of submission. The battle for Sol was over. But the war for the galaxy's future had just begun. Weeks later, in the cold conference room of a neutral station orbiting a dead star, Dr. Aristhorn sat across from the Cathari Synod's envoy. The envoy was diminished, its carapace dull. The steersman was present only as a hologram, a figure of absolute black, his features indistinct. The Borleans and Sylar observed as silent, chastened parties. The terms were not negotiated, they were stated. The steersman, through Thorn, laid them out. The Cathari Imperium would disband its expansionist military legions. It would pay reparations to the Martian colonies for a century. It would cede several key navigation routes to neutral oversight. Most importantly, it would sign and uphold a new galactic charter, drafted by the Curia and humanity's surviving legitimate governments. The charter had one central, brutal clause. The Sol system and any human world was a sovereign black zone. Any uninvited military incursion would be met with immediate, disproportionate retaliation by the Black Armada, not as defenders of Earth, but as its appointed wrath. "You made us into monsters," the steersman's hologram said, his voice final. "Now you must live with the monsters you created. Leave us to our darkness. We prefer it." On Earth, the aftermath was a complex tapestry. The Armada did not return as conquering heroes. Their ships retreated to the edges of the system, to their hidden docks, becoming once more a rumor, a spectral guarantee. The ghosts disbanded, their members returning to anonymous lives, their neural links deactivated, but their memories haunting them. The curious stepped back from the brink of total control, transferring the charter and the stewardship of the Armada's dormant technology to a reformed and now fiercely united human solar confederacy. The lesson of weakness had been learned too well. Elias Vance stood again on the soil of Mars, now under reconstruction. The sky was clear of alien ships. He looked up at the stars, no longer with wonder, but with a grim understanding. Humanity had saved itself by embracing a part of itself it feared. They were not the gentle historians of the galaxy anymore. They were the species that kept a knife in the dark, a knife they had proven willing to use. The final scene was not a celebration, but of quiet, uneasy vigil. On the bridge of the Oblivion's maw, floating at the edge of the Oort cloud, the steersman looked at the tiny, bright dot of Sol. His work was done. The Armada had saved humanity not by being its shield, but by being a mirror held up to the galaxy's own predatory face, reflecting back a darkness so profound it gave even empires pause. He powered down the command console. The bridge lights dimmed, leaving only the cold light of the stars. The Black Armada faded back into the legend from which it had emerged, a promise and a warning written in the silent black between the stars. They had thought Earth was weak. Now, and forevermore, they would remember the Black Armada. This response is AI-generated and, for reference purposes only,